I got two questions for you guys.
What's that?
I'll start with you, Sheldon. If you could remote view, would you do it?
Absolutely.
What about you, Brent?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's fascinating. In fact, it's something that I would be willing to, like we did just in a rudimentary way with those numbers. I would be really interested in testing this out to see if I could pick up anything and then verify it after the fact. I think that's fascinating. Would you?
Yeah.
I don't know. I got a lot going on. I don't got time for that, man. I barely got time to get my mail and mow my lawn and get a show out.
Just think, you might be able to remote view a Sasquatch.
Yeah, I would be down. I'd be doing something else with it. All right, here's my second question, guys,
okay.
And let me know if we should write this down and give us some thought. Okay. You have to nuke one state in order to save the rest of the United States. What state do you nuke?
California.
Sheldon.
California. Wow. Sheldon didn't pause. He's like, California.
Oh, God. I don't know. That's a tough one. I guess.
Hypothetical.
I guess if you had to pick one, I would pick the one that has the fewest people in it, and I don't know which one that is right offhand, but I don't know. That's a horrible thing to have to think about, really.
It is.
Sheldon didn't even bat an eye. He's like, California.
I know. I'm thinking about it like, oh, that was kind of crappy, actually.
Considering we've got listeners there, Sheldon, that are in the chat. Oh, well, it's a tough question.
And I'm not going to answer that question because I'm not a monster.
Oh, come on.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you. The audio you heard in the intro, or before the intro, that was from last night. I was on the Paranormal Portal with Brent and Sheldon, and the guys were kind enough to have me on the show. There's a documentary on Amazon called Third Eye Spies, and it's about remote viewing, and I always thought all that was just complete nonsense. But by the end of that documentary, they had me convinced there's something to it. And we had clips from some of the different scientists that were involved and kind of their take on things. So if you get a chance, check it out. Again, I'll throw a link underneath this episode to the live YouTube channel from last night. We had a great time. Guys were a lot of fun. And thank you guys for having me on the show. And definitely check out Brent. He also does a podcast, The Paranormal Portal. Definitely go and check it out. Tonight, we're going to be chatting with Kyle. And Kyle had an encounter in Pennsylvania. He was driving back from a delivery, and he had a very, very strange run-in with one of these creatures. And I'll kind of let Kyle go into it, but it was definitely a scary encounter. We're also going to be chatting with Timothy Renner and Chad Redding. They wrote a book, The Witch Cloud, The Haunted Bridges of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And I know Tim's been talking about this on his podcast, Strange Familiars, and he's mentioned Tim and Chad go up to this bridge, and there's been a lot of really weird things that have happened on the bridge and actually around the bridge. And it's fascinating. Even when they go up there and they're doing their investigations and setting up their recordings, they'll run into people up there. And they ran into a couple one night, and here's what happened.
We're not even to the bridge yet, and she was like, he knows we're coming. We pull in. As soon as we pull in, I park where I'm at right now.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, we're the only ones here. There is this entity walking that way, and then it disappears.
So you saw something walk across the bridge, or
it was at the end of the bridge.
It was already on the other side.
Path, yeah, and then just went. But it wasn't a quick thing. You physically saw it, and then it left. And I'm like, did you see that? And it wasn't a human because the body was wide, but the arms were long, but there wasn't a bottom, and there wasn't a head. It was that's all you could see.
I don't know if you've guys ever seen that picture, but there's a picture that somebody took of a guy sitting right there, on the edge of the bridge, and it looks exactly like that.
Yeah, except he went off around, I can't remember how far down the bend is, but it was not far, and then he was gone.
So just like a big, burly body. Just the torso with the arms.
Yes.
Was there hands?
I didn't see any.
Okay. Now you're saying like you couldn't see the legs, or
couldn't see legs
because of brush, or because the legs weren't there?
We don't know.
I can't.
We don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I can't say it was brush because he was on the path, and I saw the clear torso.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, and we'll be chatting with Tim and Chad here in a moment. The book, again, is called The Witch Cloud, The Haunted Bridges of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and it's available now on Amazon and also on strangefamiliars.com. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And if you get a chance, check out sasquatchchronicles.com. You can become a member and get additional shows. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome Kyle to the show. Kyle, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into your encounter. And I know this took place in Pennsylvania, and it's a very recent encounter. If you would just kind of start from the very beginning, what were you doing, and walk us into what happened?
Okay. Well, little backstory. I deliver motorcycles. I work for a local dealership here in town, and we run motorcycles within, I don't know, probably a 300-mile radius, sometimes further. But this particular run was Rochester, Buffalo area. So, I got all loaded up. I went up to Rochester first, did my drop-offs, pickups, and then from there, I went over to Buffalo, had a couple more drop-offs, pickups. From Buffalo, I run down 219. I take 219 all the way back down into PA. This particular day, it was, overall, I want to say it was probably about a 12-hour day. The GPS, depending on traffic, it'll jump me from either 153 to 255. And this particular day, it took me on 153. I've been up through that area more times than I can count, so I never really thought much of it. So I was just driving, and I come down and I make the corner onto 153. Now, 153 kind of skims right along the southeastern edge of the Allegheny National Forest. But no, I had probably 6 bikes in the back of our Freightliner box truck. So I'm headed up 153, and it comes up, I want to say probably a 5-6% grade. So as I'm going up the hill, I start losing speed, and I was on the phone with my wife. Her and I were just having a conversation. I wasn't really thinking much of anything. Just kind of focused on the road, focused on the conversation. And as I'm coming up the hill, the truck's losing speed, as they do. So I'm doing about 30-35 miles an hour. Out of nowhere, I get I get hit with this fear, and my all the hair on my arms stood up. I got goosebumps. It was just, it caught me off guard. It really, really unsettled me. It was a really unsettling feeling. And so I was talking to my wife, telling her about it, and just kind of going, and it just, this feeling would not leave my mind. It would not go away. As I'm coming up this hill, and it's probably 10 o'clock at night. It's dark, so I can't see anything really outside of the headlights. So as I'm going, the grade doesn't really decrease, and it's, I want to say, probably 5-6 miles. The truck's still losing speed. I make the remark to my wife that, if something was out there and wanted to grab me, I was going slow enough to where it could catch up to the truck. And, I was just kind of joking around about it, but, trying to lighten the mood a little bit. And off to the left side of the road, that excess light from the headlight that kind of just scatters, you really can't see much from it, but it's not like directly in the beam. Well, that was skimming along the left side of the road. As I'm going, the cell phone service is really spotty in that area. So I'm expecting, the phone to drop, but off to the left side, I gotta say probably 10 feet into the wood line, I see a shadow, and that's the best way that I can explain it. It was dark enough to not really make out any kind of figure, and it's moving right along with the truck, and it's sticking right in that kind of excess light, from the headlights. It never came out. It didn't come out until I was over the top of the mountain. But I kept going, and that feeling of that I wasn't supposed to be there was really, really strong at this point. And I've never had that feeling before. It was a really unsettling feeling. So there's really nothing else I can do except for, keep holding the throttle to the floor and, work the truck up the mountain. And whenever I get to the top, that's where the cell phone service usually completely cuts out. So I'm thinking to myself as I'm coming up this hill, here in a minute, I'm going to lose cell service, and I'm going to be by myself, like 100% by myself in this truck. I'm kind of keeping an eye on the left side of the road, and I can still kind of make out a shadow, and it's moving through the woods. It's pacing the truck. I get up to the top of the hill, crest the hill, and lose service, which I knew that was going to happen. So on the downhill side, there's the speed is limited for DOT trucks. So on the downhill side, I can only go 30 miles an hour. And so that's kind of sticking in my head. So I get rolling down, and I don't see it off to the left anymore. Now, once you crest the top of the hill and you start on the downhill side, there's a ravine that starts and runs pretty much the whole way down, and it's steep. It'd be tough for you to climb up on it hands and knees. But I'm going down the hill, and with the speed restriction, I'm getting on the brakes, and with me being a driver, I just kind of make it a habit to always check my mirrors, keep a good focus on everything immediately around my truck. As I'm coming down the hill, at one point, I check my side mirror, the driver's side mirror, as I happen to be getting on the brakes. There's a guardrail that runs down the left side of the road. Probably it's probably like 4 or 5 feet of level ground past the guardrail before that little ravine starts. And just off, I gotta say, he was probably 3 feet behind the guardrail. But I got on the brakes. There was something standing just beside the road. I couldn't make out what it was, and I really didn't have a good judge of height. but continued down the road, and I kept getting the feeling like there was anger there, like I can't chase you anymore. But yeah, I haven't been back up there. Not after dark. I've run that road so many times, and I haven't ever felt that feeling again. But then again, I haven't been up there after dark. I'll take 255 and I'll completely cut out that section of 153.
Yeah, it's strange. With these creatures, people tend to sense that they're around right before they see them. The feeling that you had, that dread that came over you, have you ever experienced something like that before that was equal to this?
Never. And the thing about that was it came on so suddenly. Like I was having a conversation, wasn't thinking about anything. I had been listening to music that day, so it wasn't like I was listening to creepy stories and then, you get a stretch of highway at night, to where your mind runs. I was in a conversation. It hit me out of nowhere. I got goosebumps. My eyes started watering. It was a feeling that I don't ever want to have that feeling again, ever. I was scared.
Yeah, it's that unnatural fear. A lot of eyewitnesses will say that. When you saw it, was it in front of you as you were going by, kind of on the side, or was it behind you?
It was behind the truck, because as I was coming down the hill and I got on the brakes, it was the brake lights that kind of illuminated it. I more or less kind of saw really a blob. I mean, the silhouette of it was right at the back of the shine from the taillights. So I mean, I definitely didn't get any real good look at it. It was just off of the road behind the guardrail. But I mean, if I were to walk up to the guardrail, it would be over my knees. That's about how tall this one is up there. With the size of the shadow, the silhouette that I saw, I mean, it could have stepped right over it, no problem.
You had made the comment that, you thought it was angry or that it was, you had the feeling of just rage from this thing. What made you think it was angry? Was it just kind of the way it was standing, kind of the posture, or was it more or less like a gut feeling?
It was me personally. It was more of a gut feeling. Whenever I first got that feeling coming up the mountain, it was, there's nothing that I can do to protect myself with this situation. The truck's going too slow. I can't make it go any faster. I carry a 9mm, and that wouldn't have even scratched it. And so on the downhill, whenever I got that feeling, that kind of gut feeling of, yeah, it just ran me out of here. It kind of like that feeling, you come back, we're gonna have problems. Like that's kind of the thought and the feeling that I got.
Yeah, and I feel for you, man. I know from, you and I talking that this has bothered you a lot and really shook you up. And, a lot of times when eyewitnesses talk about hiking and something is pacing them, but they don't quite see what it is. And now you're in a big rig, going down the road. And I can understand you're not going very fast. You're probably going through a lot of low gears. And it was pacing you. Did you ever see it? I know you saw it at the end, but I mean, during the time of it being on the side of you, did you ever see it?
whenever it was running along the truck, it stayed far enough in the woods to keep out of the the good shine of the headlights. It was probably right in line with the bumper of the truck, So the only light that I was getting was just that kind of ambient light that just fades off the side. So I never really got a good look at it with white light. I've run it through my head, and it's I run this truck all the time, and so I've watched on different roads that I've been on, to see if there was any shadow from the headlights that would cast over there, and I can't get it to duplicate. I can't get it to throw that shadow anywhere else.
Yeah, well, I mean, you obviously saw something. I think there was more than a shadow, and especially the way it came out. And those back lights, brake lights on those back trucks are pretty bright. I mean, it's not going to illuminate the whole thing, but I could understand why you would see a figure standing there. And it sounded like a large figure. I wanted to ask you, Kyle, I know you quit hunting about 3 years ago just from talking to you. But when you're out there hunting and you run into like a bear or a cougar, you're afraid. Don't get me wrong, you're scared. But this type of fear, before you even see it, and I hear a lot of eyewitnesses say that, it's almost like they kind of sense it before they see it. In a lot of encounters, actually. But that fear, that dread. What is your opinion? Because when I hear that, it sounds very unnatural.
And I would agree with you. I've seen bear, I've seen bobcats, and it wasn't that. It was a feeling that no animal that I've seen, it's a different kind of fear. I've walked up this another story just to kind of compare the feelings here. Years and years ago, I was middle school, got off the bus. We had a long driveway. I was walking up the driveway, and there was a coyote in the middle of the driveway as I was walking. That was scary, but that was not the same feeling as what I got in the truck. A completely different type of fear.
Yeah, I've had many eyewitnesses describe it to me, almost like a haunted home. When there's a presence there, and it's that weird fear that you get, and there's really no reason why you should be having this weird fear. It's not like running into a cougar or a bear for sure.
Right. And it's that's the other thing about that feeling is I had a feeling that something was watching me. It could see me plain as day, but I couldn't see it. Not good enough to know exactly where it was, whether it was looking at me, and I think that kind of added to it. It was wild. It was wild. I've never had a feeling like that. This is the only experience that I don't have a reasonable explanation for.
Well, I can understand that. Especially when you run into these creatures, their appearance and presence is enough to terrify you. I would almost think it would be worse having that feeling, but you haven't seen anything quite yet because you were driving the truck up there, and a lot of eyewitnesses, myself included, you'll get that weird sense of dread or fear or something isn't right here, generally right before you see the creature. Maybe that's why I say natural, because I can't think of any other situation where it's like that. And I feel for you, man, because you drive for a living. I bet every time you go down that road, it's in the back of your head.
The times that I've gone on that road since, it's always been daylight. the way that I'll work the schedule, or the route for that day, if I have to go that direction, I'll hit those guys first so that I'm not up there at night. If I had, a run that, I'd take our 250, then it wouldn't matter as much, because I know that truck, if I need to get out of there, it will. There wouldn't be anything that would limit me as far as size. But to go up there after dark, no, I haven't yet. But driving up there through the daytime, yeah, I've been up through there probably another 30, 35 times. But it's always been daylight. That was the last time that I was up there at night.
Yeah, and who could blame you? I mean, there's nothing worse than being in that situation of you can't see it, but the fear is there. It's like one sense is working. I wanted to ask you because I know you weren't really into Bigfoot prior to this, and then you had this experience. What do you think that they are?
Honestly, to break it down, I would have to say that they're flesh and blood. But as far as that fear goes, and I've listened to other episodes where people say that they get the same feelings. I wonder if it's not maybe a pheromone that they put off, something like that hits us on a more primitive or primal level. But I think that they're just creatures, like, that are actually here.
Yeah, that's a fair answer, and I mean, it's an answer that would make the most sense. You would think. I have kind of a theory on what happened in this situation. I wanted to ask you though, if you stopped or it was able to get near you, do you think it would have harmed you?
With the feeling that I got, if the truck would have broke down and I would have had to have stopped, um, I think this story would have gone differently.
Yeah, I always worry about truck drivers. They tend to have a lot of encounters and kind of aggressive encounters. And I kind of had a theory on that. I had a guy one time come on the show, and what he would do is he would go out in the middle of nowhere and pick up all of the cut wood from the lumber crew, and then he would deliver it back in town. And he had a very, very aggressive encounter out there. And he kind of mentioned that sense of dread. But in that situation, and in a lot of truck driver situation, I often wonder if it's the diesel engine that pisses these things off. It's kind of like I love Harleys, but when the guy goes down the road on his Harley, and all your windows are shaking and everything, I've often wondered if it's the diesel engine that seems to kind of irritate them, because most truck drivers have kind of aggressive encounters. And yours would have been terrifying because, I mean, you were in a low gear, and those trucks take forever to get up to speed.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And you saying about the logging guy, that kind of pops something else into mind too. The turbo. The turbo of a diesel engine on a truck that size is going to whistle at such a high frequency. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, I didn't think about the whistle and I don't drive truck, but this poor kid that I was just telling you about, the one that would go and pick up the lumber, I think he had two encounters, and both of them were extremely aggressive. And this kid really didn't do anything. And I thought, why in the world are they trying to? Why are they trying to kill this guy? And it kind of hit me on the truck. Maybe it's the noise that's irritating them. Just a theory.
Right. And that very well could be, and it's, um, it very well could have just been wrong place, wrong time. Like he was trying to get across the road, and then I come along, and my truck's going so slow, and thought that he needed to get out in front of me to cross. I don't know.
Yeah, you'll have to let me know if anything else happens while you're out there on the road. In your situation, that's the one thing I have a hard time trying to figure out. That sense of dread, that sense of fear. As we were talking earlier, it doesn't happen with known animals. You're in fear when you run into them, but they don't cause that high sense of dread that kind of overtakes you. And it makes me wonder, is it something that we're doing almost like, do we subconsciously know it's around? We know something's around, and so it kicks it up a notch, or is it something that they're doing to us? It's strange. A lot of eyewitnesses talk about it, though, and most of the time, like I said before, you'll get that right before you see the creature. And I know what you saw step out was basically kind of like a blob squatch. That fear, though, that overtakes you is strange.
Right. And that's the biggest thing about this, about this encounter. I really didn't get a good look, but the feeling that I got is really what set all of this off. I didn't ever feel this feeling before, and I haven't had it again since. It was just that, I gotta say, maybe 20 minutes that I was on that stretch of road, and hands down, to this point, it's like the second scariest experience that I've had.
Yeah, what was the first one?
My son wound up with RSV and was in the hospital on oxygen for 3 days.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah, that is scary. I mean, if you're a parent, when your kid, you got to take your kid to the hospital, especially for something very serious like that. I could see how that would be the most scary moment, for sure. I really appreciate you coming on, Kyle, and sharing with us what happened to you.
Yeah, definitely.
And next up on the show is Timothy Renner and Chad Redding. And we're going to be discussing Tim's new book, The Witch Cloud, The Haunted Bridges of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Definitely go over to Amazon and get yourself a copy. And if you haven't heard Tim's podcast, Strange Familiars, definitely go give it a listen. I listen to Tim's podcast. I really enjoy it. It's very different from a lot of podcasts, and I know he puts a lot of effort into it, and he does a great job. Tim, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Wes.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And Chad, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it very much.
And Tim, if you would, I'll have you start. Tell us a little bit about your book, The Witch Cloud, The Haunted Bridges of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, on Amazon and strangefamiliars.com. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, we were looking for something special to do for Strange Familiar's 300th episode, and we didn't know what that was going to be. We made a joke. We said we should do a cassette episode of a podcast just as a joke, like like release it on cassette. And we're kind of kicking around ideas. And Chad was with me one night. We were hiking in Gettysburg. We were actually hiking the battlefields, and you have to get off the battlefields by, I think it's 10 o'clock at the time. I think it might be dusk now since COVID, but I think at the time it was 10 p.m. We had to get off the battlefields, and Chad's like, well, let's go somewhere else. Do you know any place to go? And since we were in Gettysburg, I had heard about this bridge, and I'd been there once before. The way I heard about it, I was at a paranormal convention in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I heard people talking about it. The people at the stand next to me. I was selling my books and stuff there. I heard them saying, like, the scariest place in Gettysburg is what they called Suicide Bridge. That's what they called this, Suicide Bridge. And I kind of filed it way in the back of my head. And the reason that I was interested, though, is they said they went there and they said something was banging on the bridge that they couldn't see. And, being a Bigfoot guy, I'm thinking something was banging on the bridge that you couldn't see. And, this is a ghost. What are we talking about here? I need to go check this out. In any case, like I said, I went there once. It's kind of not too much happened. the first time I was there. But then Chad and I went back this night, and it seemed really active with this like poltergeist activity, weird knocks and sounds and so forth. And it's very close to another bridge. It's directly in line with a very famous haunted bridge in Gettysburg called Sachs Covered Bridge. They usually do, if you see a program on the Ghost of Gettysburg or something, they'll usually feature Sachs Covered Bridge because it's a cool place to film. It's an old covered bridge. It looks great. In any case, they're right next to each other. And Chad and I were talking. We're like, these bridges are, less than a half a mile apart, or maybe about a half mile. Why has nobody connected these two bridges? They're right, basically one leads to the other. They're both supposed to be haunted. So we started digging into it. We found some ghost legends, but we also found a lot of stuff that really sounded like cryptid stuff, like Bigfoot stuff. And including, some of the witnesses we talked to on the bridge saw things which sounds like Sasquatch.
Yeah, and I played that clip you sent me, Tim, at the very beginning of the show of the couple you guys ran into. And I've heard you talk about this bridge on your podcast, Strange Familiars. Chad, have you been on the bridge and heard the knocking and experienced this weird stuff going on?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It usually comes from underneath the bridge, but we've also heard it around the bridge area. One time we actually felt the knock underneath our feet.
You guys this is madness. You guys are madmen going out there in the middle of the night. Are you guys on the bridge when this is going on?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We were rolling recorders. So there's an audiobook version of it as well. It's a normal book. It's available on Amazon and everywhere you get books. But if you want the audiobook version, you can get it directly from me. We can talk about that later. But in any case, in the audio version, you can actually hear some of these thumps and thuds and stuff as we were recording it.
So when you guys hear the knocking, do you guys go underneath the bridge to find out what's going on?
Chad did, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I went under there numerous times. The bridge isn't that high, so it's not like it's 20 feet above the water or anything like that. It's probably, I'd say, Tim, about 5 feet above the surface of the creek?
It's a little higher than that. It's probably I don't know, 6 feet, probably 6 or 7 feet.
Yeah, because I've gone underneath and I can stand underneath the bridge, but you're right at the water level. The night that we heard the knocking under our feet, we both kind of skedaddled out of there because it was a very intense night that night. We hadn't heard numerous bangs and thuds. And we were actually recovering a recorder that we had left there on the one side. And as we were recovering the recorder and we're standing there, and all of a sudden we heard this bang, and it was literally underneath us. And we're like, oh, okay, time to go. When we investigate an area, we'll sometimes reach a point where we're like, okay, you get this feeling that enough is enough, and we've poked whatever is there at the areas that we are investigating, and we just, it's time to leave. But yeah, I've been under there and have found no reason for these knocks and bangs. It wasn't like, this is a metal bridge, so it wasn't like the metal was cooling or anything like that. It was way into the night where the bridge would have cooled beyond that. But as far as it being haunted, I don't know. Everybody automatically assumes that, but there's just so much phenomenon out there that happens.
Yeah, and I've been listening to the show, so I know what's going on out there. But for someone who hasn't heard the show, what other things are you guys experiencing beyond the knocking?
As far as what we've experienced, we've seen a lot of weird lights all around the bridge that we just can't explain. One night I saw what looked like someone carrying a lantern on the ridge above it, and it went behind a tree and stopped, and that's federal land. There shouldn't be anybody there at that point. But, that one might be explainable. But we've had these other lights, including lights that, one little one I actually photographed on the bridge. But just lights all around. They'll just pop up in the woods. And it's like, what's that light there? Originally, we thought there was a lot of people around, like maybe smoking cigarettes or something. But we'd go off after these lights and there wouldn't be anybody there. There's a swamp kind of right by it to the south of the bridge. And a lot of times the lights were in that swamp, and there's nobody out there. There's nobody standing there, you can get some ghost hunters around and stuff because it's Gettysburg. You get a lot of ghost hunters, but ghost hunters don't tend to go off the path too far. They kind of tend to stick around, these bridges and stuff. They don't really go into the woods or go into the wild too much. And but we investigated anyway, and there's no explanation for these lights. So the lights and the noises, and those were the main things. And then again, like I said, we talked to witnesses there who had seen. The one reported, essentially described a Sasquatch. They said they pulled up and saw. They were calling it a ghost, but they said this thing was as wide as Chad and I, and taller than us, and its arms hung down below its or to its knees or something, and saw it walk through there. And then we interviewed witnesses while we were interviewing people. They were talking about being paced in the woods. There's a little bit of woods next to the bridge. They were talking about being paced, which we've actually had that happen as well. We've been paced there, but these witnesses that night, while we were talking to them, I had my back turned, and they said they saw a 7-foot tall, solid black thing cross across the path, and these were ghost hunters, and they said, we're not coming back here. They said they went to Gettysburg regularly. They said, we're not coming back to this location.
Yeah, the being paced out of the woods happens to many people, and very few people actually see it, but they know, the sound and everything else. They know they're being walked out. In certain areas where Sasquatch, or there's ghosts, or it's UFOs or whatever, sometimes you can look into the history. And I know that you know your folklore and your history really well, Tim. And it's my understanding that there's kind of a legend that Civil War soldiers actually were hanged off this bridge, but you haven't, or people commit suicide off this bridge, but you haven't been able to really find anything.
Yeah, so if you ask the local people, this isn't one of the places. It is now because we've been talking about it on Strange Familiars, and it's getting a little more popular, and some of the ghost hunting tours actually go there now. Before that, this was really kind of like you had to be a local. You had to know about this place. The tourists and the ghost tours and stuff, they would go to the Sachs Bridge, the covered bridge I was telling you about. That's very near this. But the locals would call it Suicide Bridge. And I looked all through every possible record I could, every newspaper, for any evidence of a suicide around this bridge. And there just isn't any. There's no record of it that I could find. So I thought, this is probably an urban legend. But the curious thing is the other bridge, the Sachs Bridge, the wooden bridge, the covered bridge, that was there during the Civil War. Well, it existed during the Civil War. It's been rebuilt and moved since then. But that has a legend of 3 Confederate soldiers being hanged on it. They were deserters, which is unproven. If you ask the park history guides and stuff, they'll tell you there's nothing to that story. It's not, it's never been proven to be true. But there is a story with the other bridge of people being hanged. So I don't know whether it kind of got conflated because they're near each other, but and people know this so-called Suicide Bridge was built after the Civil War. So they know they don't tie too many Civil War stories to it, which is unusual for Gettysburg. But so I don't know whether it just got conflated, because the story of the hanging of the Confederate soldiers or what. But locals will tell you, they'll tell you stories hey, yeah. Several people have hanged themselves on this bridge, but you can't find any evidence of that, which is pretty interesting, I think, because a lot of people claim to see apparitions of related to these hangings.
Yeah, and I know that you've recorded a lot of really cool audio pieces, and there's a lot of things going on here. All the activity, does it mainly seem to be focused on the bridge, or is it just the general area?
It seems focused on the bridge. And Chad, the first night we were there, Chad walked there's a cold spot on the path. It used to be a road. You used to be able to drive over this bridge, but it's closed now. You can walk on it. It's like a bike path now. Chad walked over the bridge and walked it gets very, very dark on the other side, and there's a little bit of woods on each side there. And he walked into that area and he found this cold spot, and he said, I really don't like this. And it's a very, I've been in haunted houses and felt cold spots and stuff before. And this is the coldest cold spot I've ever felt in my life. It's palpable. You just walk into it. It was in the summer when we first went there, and it was like walking into a freezer, walking into that cold spot. And Chad got very sick. He got very upset and very sick. And he said that he felt that it wasn't the temperature dropping, that it was something there that was kind of pulling energy from us. Again, this is just feelings. This is, cue the woo sound effects, but, woo. But Chad said he thought something there was like kind of feeding off of energy off of people. So that's at that point we started kind of looking more into the history of it. It affected me similarly, but not anywhere near as much as Chad. Chad got sick a couple times that we were there.
Tell me about that, Chad. What happened?
We had walked over into that cold area, and as Tim described it, it wasn't like an ambient cold. It wasn't like cold around us. It was almost as if you were having the warmth drawn out of your body. It even being suspended in cold water wouldn't have that feeling. It was that intense, and had this feeling of weakness in that spot. And then once we got through that, we weren't so bad. I mean, it even was to the point that it even put me down on my knees at one time. And we walked over to Sachs Bridge, and then we were coming back, and I think it's not even a half mile between the two bridges. I haven't measured the distance or anything like that, but it's very close. As we got closer to the bridge, I started actually vomiting. And I'm not one to really get sick that often. And then when we got back to that spot, I was just like, I felt like I was run over by a truck. The next day, I was basically laid up all day long, just feeling sick and weak. And Tim, you didn't feel the best that day, neither did you, the following day after that?
No, I was worried. And this was during COVID.
Yeah.
I was worried Chad had COVID at this point.
Yeah, we were both like, "Oh God, I hope you don't got COVID." But that's not what it was, because the following day I was better, but it just really took a lot out of me. And even when the first time when I got there, because even though I'm basically somewhat from the area, I live close to there, I had never heard of Suicide Bridge. I knew of Sachs and had been there before, but I had never been to this metal bridge. And when we first got there, we ran into this couple, Bethany and Shannon, and we actually ran into them twice. And as I'm wont to do when Tim's talking to witnesses, he's getting the story. I'll roam around and I'll just check out the area, look at things. And I had crossed over the bridge, and like you said, I felt that cold spot, and just felt, just had not a good feeling. Is the best way to describe it. Of course, these are my impressions.
What kind of got you into looking into this? I mean, did you owe Tim money, and so you had to go out there with him?
No. Actually, see, I hike with Tim because that way, the reason I wait is I make sure whatever we're looking for eats him first, so I can get away. But no. I actually had an encounter. Long story short, I was out with a friend at this one time, and we were hiking this trail early in the morning, and it ended up there was like a forest, almost a forest fire, and I ended up having to call the fire company, and I couldn't get any signal, so I went halfway down the mountain, and this guy who hunts, he was an outdoorsman, a hunter. I get a signal, and I'm coming back up, and here he comes running down. He saw something go up the mountain, and we ended up going back up because we had to wait for the fire people to come. They cut the tree down, they put it out, and we ended up still going on our hike. We got screamed at by something twice, and I ended up, I heard about this podcast because I was never part of this podcast world before. I didn't even know about it. A friend of mine told me about this podcast. He's like, "You need to check out the Strange Familiars," because I wear a lot of plaid. That's just what I wear. And he's like, "Yeah, you got to hear about this plaid man thing." And I started listening to Strange Familiars, and I'm like, well, I need to contact this guy, this Tim guy, and tell him about, my encounter. And we went on this hike because Tim likes to be in where it happens, just like I like to be too. And we went on this hike, and we just kind of hit it off, and here I am. What is it now, 3 years, Tim? We've been doing this together? 4 years?
Least. Yeah, at least.
Yeah. There's a lot going on in that place, trust me.
Yeah, that's why we called it the Witch Cloud. I found a quote from, there's a folklore from Pennsylvania. His name is Henry Shoemaker. I found an article from the Altoona Tribune, March 20th, 1939, and he was talking about this area a little bit further north, but it was this area where people were having these multiple encounters happening at once. They were seeing all these different kind of paranormal things. And he called it the phenomenon, the witch cloud, when a bunch of paranormal things happen together. And his quote was, "Where the witch cloud hovers, anything may happen, even a specter elk, a werewolf, or even a brooklock, as the very old Pennsylvania mountain people call a vampire." All of which reminds one of George H. Burroughs' description of the Estadia of Spain. The Estadia are spirits of the dead who ride upon the haze bearing candles in their hands. So it was just a neat little quote, but I used it as the title of the book because it's from Pennsylvania, it's from Shoemaker, but it's describing this idea where these multiple phenomenon are happening in one place. And I thought, well, that's a great, first of all, it's a neat term, but it's a great description for this area because we were having, like I said, these people are describing Bigfoot, other people are describing ghosts, people are describing all kinds of weird stuff going on around there. So that's where we took the title from.
The Witch Cloud. What a cool name for a book. And if you want to get yourself a copy, go to Amazon. Again, it's called The Witch Cloud, The Haunted Bridges of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And you can go to Strange Familiars if you want an audio version of the book. And you can also listen to the guys. They've collected, you guys have really got some really cool audio. And so you can go listen to the audio and all the weird stuff going on. Be careful while you guys are out there. And I'll include a link for the book. And definitely check out Tim's podcast, Strange Familiars. Thanks so much for coming on, guys.